Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second day of Flash Talks here at the Hackathon of Vue Storefront. I don't know who is watching this, but if you're participating in this hackathon, um, thank you for participating. And I would actually be interested in how it's going. So if you are participating, just write in the comments on YouTube how your project is going, and I would be happy to just see how things are. All right. Yeah. So this is the second day. Today we have again two speakers, same as yesterday, Jakub Andrzejewski and Danielle Kelly. So the first speaker is Jakub. He is going to talk about the developer experience in Nuxt 3. Yeah, he is a senior developer at Vue Storefront, and he's an ambassador at Nuxt and Storyblok, so he knows what he's talking about. And without further ado, take it away, Jakub.
Yo, Vue Storefront community. Let's dive deep into developer experience and, in particular, Nuxt 3. My name is Jakub and I am a senior full-stack developer at Vue Storefront. And I'm also an ambassador in both Nuxt.js community, in Storyblok, and recently also Adyen Payments. What is developer experience? Developer experience in basic words is just how developers are using your product, how efficient, how easy it is for them to use the product, how easy it is for them to customize the product. So basically it describes the experience the developers have while using or working on your product. So we can see it as a mix of both the user experience, because developers are also users of your software or your product, and the development principles, and they both combined make it that developer experience. And development experience can be achieved by many different factors. The easiness of using it, of learning the product, of using it, of customizing it, of how we can extend it, like adding more functionalities to the core concept or the core functionality. And there are actually many things you can do to improve the developer experience of your product. There is a very good article which is not as new because it's 2017. However, it summarizes very well what your product has to be or has to have in order to be perceived as a product that has very good developer experience. So from things like releasing changelogs, migration guides, documentation, videos, and so on. If you're looking for a very detailed explanation on what you need in order to have a great developer experience product, you can go there and you will have a lot of answers to the questions. So how does Nuxt 3 improve the developer experience? Let's start with Vite. Vite is a front-end build tool that is not necessarily glued to Vue Js ecosystem. You can use it in many different factors, in many different frameworks, like React, like Svelte. So it's more like a build tool that improves the developer experience by providing very fast load times of your application. So Vite consists of two main factors or main functionalities. One, which is boosting your developer experience while developing software in the development environment, and it is a dev server that serves your source files over native ES modules and also provides a hot module replacement, which is really fast. And the second one, which is a build command that bundles your code using rollup into pre-configured that is pre-configured to output very highly optimized static assets for production. So just to show you a quick example, this is basically what is the developer experience while using Vite. We can see that the reloading of the server takes milliseconds instead of 15 seconds, for example, for the project to reload. And what's funny here, this is a recommendation that I got from Scott Spence. You can check him out in Twitter @ScottSpence. He proposed to me that considering how fast Vite is reloading your server, you can also set a configuration in your development IDE to auto save your files after a certain amount of time. So let's say that you will set this timeout of automatic saving files for about half a second or 0.3 seconds. What it will happen is that you will have almost instant changes on your website, because you will have very fast autosave and also very fast server reload, which will cause your changes in the browser almost instant. Next one is full TypeScript support. And what it's really interesting about it is that it supports TypeScript in pages, in components, in composables, so certain files. We will have auto-completion, we will have some suggestions of what properties or what methods we can use from certain libraries or composables, components, and also in the Nuxt config.ts file. So after creating a very simple Nuxt-free project, we already have a TypeScript support in all places we need. So in components, in our Vue Js files, in our composables, in middleware, and so on, and also in the most important nuxt.config file. In terms of components, Nuxt automatically imports any components here in our components directory. So whenever we create a new header component inside components directory, it will be automatically imported into our project so that we can use it everywhere in the application. And that's not something new. It was already introduced in the Nuxt 2. However, right now, this automatic import also supports Vue 3 and also supports functionalities like script setup, so that we can define components, pages using script setup, and they will all be automatically imported to our application. But auto-importing components can lead to issues, because we can import a component that is used in certain place of our application. We can import them or import it in all places, which might not be something that we want. But Nuxt core team already figured that out and proposed lazy loading. So lazy loading as a concept allows to dynamically import certain code, in our case certain component, after it is actually needed. So what will happen here in this example is that the code needed to render the footer component will be fetched when it will be actually needed. So when user scrolls down to the page, to the end of the page. And how we achieve that? The only thing we need to do is to add lazy prefix before the name of the component. So if we have created the footer component, the only thing we need to make it lazy loaded, then dynamically imported, is to add the lazy prefix before the name of the component, which is really nice. Nuxt 3 also uses the concept of composables, and the composables are those functions that allow you to reuse functionality across the app by using state that is preserved on the server side by using the use state composable, and also very useful but built-in composables like use cookie, use request headers, use Nuxt app, which previously we were accessing Nuxt app by calling this.context. And in Nuxt 3, we have access to it by using use Nuxt app. And we have been using the concept of composables in Vue Storefront for a while. So if you have tried Vue Storefront before, you for sure know things like use product, use category, use search. And it worked in a very similar way. So we had this certain functionality that allowed us to perceive the state of a product, of a category over our application. In terms of modules, modules are those functions that allow us to extend the core functionality of Nuxt. So we have the core concept of Nuxt, and let's say that we want to have an integration with a certain third-party library or a certain functionality like PWA, support for internationalization, IATN, easier to pronounce. So in Nuxt 2, there was this template module repository in GitHub that you could use to create your own modules, your new modules. However, for Nuxt 3, what Nuxt core team decided to do is to create a new module template called Module Builder that allows you to very easily create new Nuxt modules with things like out-of-the-box TypeScript support, out-of-the-box build support with unbuild. And in this example, we can see that the define Nuxt module method accepts one object parameter with things like meta, where we can define the name of our module, and the config key. The config key is used in the nuxt-config.ts file. So let's say that we have the module that is called myAwesome module. So by defining a config key myAwesome module, in nuxt-config.ts, when we define an object called myAwesome module, we can define the settings or the configuration for our module. Apart from meta, we can also define a default options, default configuration. So what happens when a user doesn't provide us any configuration? And finally, the most important step is the setup function that allows us to add plugins, add middleware, add composables, add new components, so that we can wrap all this logic into this module. And you can check it out using the following link. Nuxt offers many modules. However, not all of them are Nuxt 3 ready. For now, for like today, we have 18 modules working for Nuxt 3 that you can very easily check out using the modules.nuxt.js.org website that lists all these modules that are available for you. In terms of official modules like PWA, image, auth that are provided by Nuxt, the support is planned for the next few weeks to be released. However, it's not that easy because these modules provide very useful functionality, but it also makes it quite difficult to migrate to the newer version. But for sure, it's planned for the next weeks. Apart from the official modules, you can also choose community modules that are created by Nuxt.js community members. And I will propose you to choose Nuxt.js Algolia, which is the module that I have created for Nuxt community, which allows for very easy integration with Algolia search, that allows for very fast search, and also support for Vue instance search. So by importing just this Nuxt.js Algolia module, you have access to the Algolia API, so you can search very quickly and get the results. And you also have the access to the components. So by importing module, you have the components, you have the data from the search, nothing else is needed. Server endpoints. So server endpoints allows us to add backend logic to our Nuxt application. So it works quite similar to the server middleware that we used to use in Nuxt 2. However, in this case, what will happen is whenever you create a file inside this /server/API folder in your root directory, it will automatically create the endpoints out of it. So let's say that we create a file called test.ts in this directory. Whenever we access /localhost/server/API, or just the server, just the API/test, what will happen is that we will have the new endpoint created. So inside of it, we can add the logic for database management, or adding new records, or maybe providing some additional functionalities for our e-commerce, or maybe handling some payments. Everything that is related to the backend or the server side of our Nuxt application can be added here. And there is a very good introduction into Nuxt Free Server API by Anthony Fu. I definitely recommend you to check it out. It's only 1 minute, and it shows really well how you can utilize the server endpoints to match your needs. So we have explained or discussed several Nuxt free features, but there are many more of them. I just picked the one, or selected the ones that I thought are very useful for the developer experience. If you are interested in more and seeing how they work out of the box with a demo, there is a good video by Tim Penix that he introduces some Nuxt free features like layouts and explains each of them with a certain demo, or data fetching, layouts, components, and so on and so on. So what about the state of Nuxt Free? Because we already explained quite a few features, quite a few functionalities that improve the developer experience. So Nuxt Free is still in beta. However, the release candidate is planned for March, like this March, next month, in a few days, let's say. So we are all waiting for it. The Nuxt core team is doing their best to deliver the Nuxt Free release candidate as fast as possible, but it takes a lot of work. So, however, we can help them, because we all can make Nuxt Free the best framework ever. How? First, we can join Nuxt Discord server, and not only join, but we can help, because in Nuxt Discord there are many channels that you can help by giving some answers to some certain questions, or providing help to certain modules to migrate them to Nuxt Free, to build new modules. So if you are interested in helping Nuxt team deliver the best possible framework, Nuxt Discord is definitely the place to go. There are already few RFCs, requests for comments, in Nuxt that you can participate in and give your opinion, because there are many people who have different opinions, different experiences in terms of building software. So the more the discussions, the better the solution, the better the result. So you can participate in them, give your opinion, share your thoughts, and even propose some features as well. You can also share Nuxt free content, like writing an article, or recording a video about something, or giving a talk, such as this one. You can also build modules, because as I mentioned, I have created one. There are many people in the Nuxt community that also created modules, Nuxt 3 or Nuxt 2 modules. So considering how simple it is right now to build new modules using the module builder, it's very simple and gives a lot of joy when you have something that works and provides a good value to the developer and the final user. Make sure to give a star to Nuxt, Nuxt 2, Nuxt 3, and the modules as well. And also Vue Storefront, because Vue Storefront also uses Nuxt under the hood and utilizes many features that we discussed today. So make sure to give them a star. And that will be it. Thanks very much for your attention. If you have any questions, features, or you would like to improve something in what I explained, in what I discussed, you can contact me using Twitter @Andrzejewski, and you can also find me in the Nuxt Discord channel, in the Vue Storefront Discord channel, and many more. Thanks, have a great day, and see you.
All right, thank you, Jakub, for that, for your talk. And we have him here live to answer some questions. How are you doing, Jakub?
Yeah, quite fine. I looked at the video, and since when I was recording it, I'm now a bit shorter due to the hair. Visit to the hairdresser. So yeah, really looking forward to some questions.
Yeah, so there are no questions in the comments yet. So we have 8 people watching. If someone has a question for Jakub concerning Nuxt 3 developer experience, just go ahead. In the meanwhile, I have some questions that I wrote down. For example, what do you think is the hardest thing about developer experience to get down right? Because there are a lot of things to do in developer experience, and some are probably more difficult than others. What do you think is one of the most difficult things to get correct?
Okay, so basically I would say that in tools, that the best tools you're currently seeing as the ones that have the best possible developer experience, for example, Vite or maybe Tailwind, CSS, what you see by using them is that they have to support many frameworks, many tools. So if you look at Vite, it can also work with React, can also work with Vue, with Svelte. And this is something what also Storyblok team has done recently. So they refactored the packages so that they can support Vue, Nuxt, Svelte, and React as well. So I would say that the most difficult one is to support, when you have this kind of a core concept, that it's really usable, developers really like it. So how you can extend its ecosystem. So by using modules, plugins, and so on and so on. So for other directions, other tools.
All right, cool. Sounds reasonable. And what else do I have? I have a whole list. I try to not ask like the smaller ones. Oh yeah, this is a good one. What is something that, according to you, could be improved in Nuxt 3 when it comes to developer experience? I know the experience has already improved over the version 2, but what is something that you think that still might be missing? If there is something, can also be.
Sure. We had this discussion with one of the members of Nuxt community where he proposed an extension to VS Code, to your IDE, so that by clicking certain commands, it will create, for example, a page or a component or a layout, or even start a server for you. So I really like the idea. However, I would combine it in a way as, for example, Nest.js, which is a backend framework that is very similar to Angular as well, how they are utilizing the CLI for the user. Because right now, what you do with the Nuxt, which is the new CLI for Nuxt 3, is mainly you are just generating a new project. However, what both Angular and Nest.js are doing is that they are using or utilizing the CLI to create new components or new controllers for Nest.js, or modules or services. So it could be quite useful for Nuxt 3, so that when you use Nuxt, for example, Nuxt generate new component or new page, it could generate a page for you with the basic syntax, for example, script setup, with the template, the style section, that will be quite useful. I'm using something like this in SJS for generating controllers, modules, and services, and it's really useful.
Yeah, that's actually something that I think a lot of people would enjoy, a VS Code extension. Cool. So no questions from the public so far. So I will just go ahead with my questions. Do you know what is the easiest way to deploy a Nuxt 3 application while we are using the server API? So we will need a backend server. Is it Vercel? Is it spinning up your own? Is it some other options?
Okay, so for that, there is a very good section in the documentation of Nuxt 3 docs, where you have the Vercel, Netlify, I think Cloudflare as well. I'm not entirely sure. However, they have this section where they explain step by step what you could do to deploy the application with it. So I think what is crucial here is the support for the new server that Nuxt team is creating, based on H3, which is the Nitro pack. I think Puya Parsa, PO, mentioned it in a few presentations or few talks already, that they are focusing really much on this Nitro pack to be hosting provider generic, so that you will have very similar approach no matter what hosting you choose, in terms of the caching, in terms of the deployment of some kind of headers, request headers, and so on and so on. However, from my personal experience, I really enjoyed both Netlify and Vercel for the deployment, because they both have, at least for Nuxt 2 and Nuxt 3 right now as well, but it's not as supported as Nuxt 2. They have this kind of templates. So you can just choose, okay, I will be deploying the Nuxt application. And there you will have, okay, so your build command is probably this one, or your main directory is probably this one. So I would say that both Netlify and Vercel. Okay,
cool. All right, what else? You talked about the auto saving after certain seconds. Do you see there some downsides? Because I could imagine, like, you type, and like you'll have like a bracket open, and then you type something more, and then it's like syntax error or something on the side, and it changes like that. Is that an issue you see, or is there ways to go around it?
Yeah, but first of all, I would like to apologize to Scott, because I thought that he has a different Twitter handle. It's at Spence's 10, I think, not at Scott Spence.
Yes.
First of all, sorry for that, Scott. I hope that you didn't lose too many followers.
This is the handle of Scott Spence if you like more of these tips here.
So answering to your question, yeah, I think it can be an issue as well, because, for example, if you're working on several projects, which some of them use Vite and some of them don't, you might basically find this feature unusable, because in other projects, your reload time might take much longer. So for sure, for the normal projects, of course, I would suggest to set this auto save to amount of time that suits you best. So for example, not maybe 0.3 seconds, but maybe a second or 2. It should allow you to easily type whatever you want without a need of manually reloading. So I would say that 2 seconds would probably be fine as well. To see this automatic reloading and not caring too much about the control save.
Yeah. All right, cool. We have one question from the audience, from Mel Jones. When using Nuxt 3, do you write everything with the composition API, or do you still use the options API sometimes?
Mm-hmm. So I use mainly the composition API, purely because this is the way that Nuxt 3 is also doing it. So when you see modules that are currently being created, like the Strappy module that was, I think, the first module that was supporting Nuxt 3, and the new modules that are being created for Partytown, Harlem, and I forgot the one that was recently created. So they all mainly are using the composition API, and I would go for that. I don't really remember the last time I was using the options API in Nuxt 3 and Nuxt 2, I think, as well. Because in Vue Storefront, for example, we are using the composition API. So if you are using Vue Storefront, like the second version, Vue Storefront 2, there are many places where you will see composables as well, composition API. So use product, use category, use search, for example.
All right, but I suppose we can still write Vue options API code if someone is more familiar with that.
Yeah.
That's what FNU said in one of the conferences I've seen lately. He said it's whatever feels best to you, like whatever feels more natural to you, just do that, and it's not going to go away the options API because it's very very low, very easy to maintain. So yeah, just don't mix it on purpose. All right, our time is over, Jacob. Thank you a lot for your talk, also for the answers to our questions, and I hope to see you around.
Thanks.
Bye-bye,
see
Jacob.
you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, our next speaker is Danielle Kelly. He's going to talk about large-scale large-scale Vue.js applications and the patterns, how to make it scalable well, how to not get a mess in your code. He is a teacher and content creator at Vue School, and he is a web developer. He codes a lot in Vue and Nuxt, and yeah, he's going to talk about the large-scale app patterns. And without further ado, take it away, Daniel.
Hey y'all, I'm really excited to be with you today and get to share a few tips and tricks that I've picked up during my time as a developer. My name is Danielle Kelly and I'm a teacher with Vue School. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to contribute back to the Vue community that has really given me so much throughout my development career. Before I joined on at Vue School, I was a full-stack developer, and I've worked with a number of technologies over the years, such as PHP and Laravel, and, of course, JavaScript in Vue. When I'm not coding, I spend my time as a husband and a father, and to be honest, I don't know what I wrestle with more, my children or my code. When you have 3, there's a lot of that goes on. Anyways, that's enough about me. Let's get to what you really came here to hear about today. And that is, what is the best way to structure a Vue.js application so that it is maintainable and scalable the more it grows? Well, if I may be so bold, I'm going to try to answer that often asked question with a single word. And here it is. Predictability. When it comes to building a scalable project, you want everything about it to be as absolutely predictable as possible. What does that mean on a practical level, though? Well, to me, it's about the ability to go from a feature request or a bug report to the exact location or maybe few multiple locations in the code where said feature or bug report can be addressed. Not only that, I think it's the ability to know what tools and what data you have access to at that location in the code. Now, why is this important? Why is it important that we have predictable code bases? Well, if you're anything like me, you've definitely felt like this before. You've opened up the codebase in your editor and you've been assigned a task and you think, I don't even know where to start. I'm lost, I have no idea what I'm doing, and yeah, I think we've all been there. Maybe it's because we're new to the team, maybe it's because we're new to a project, and maybe that's a little bit more understandable. But maybe it's even a project we've been working on for quite a while, and we just don't even know where to start. Well, That's the goal of a predictable codebase, is to alleviate this experience as much as humanly possible. And with it is going to get rid of a lot of headaches and is going to eliminate a lot of frustration and get back for you a lot of your time. Now, real quick, let's just take a look at what I'm not saying. First of all, I'm not saying that your code base can be 100% predictable. I'm not saying you won't ever have to do any digging to kind of find what you're looking for, right? That's simply not possible. I'm also not saying that your code base can be 100% understood as a whole. In fact, most applications, or at least a lot of very large applications, are just simply too complex to be able to hold the whole thing in your head at one time. And therefore, a code base being predictable isn't necessarily about being able to understand the whole thing at one time. To me, predictability is really more about being able to predict where a certain piece in that code base fits in, and really be able to only focus on that one piece at a time without having to think about the rest. In fact, I think that's a measure of a really good code base. Alright, so how do we accomplish predictability? That's the question, isn't it? Well, once again, if I may be so bold, I'm going to try to answer it in a single word. And that word is standards. Why standards? Well, because really this is how you make anything predictable, right? I can know with a pretty much 100% assurity that when I go to change the sheets on my son's bed tonight, that the sheets I get out of the closet will fit, because there's a standard sizing system, and it's just made that way with a standard. Now, I may get the wrong, size sheets out of the closet for my bed instead of his, but yeah, we've been there. But that's on me. That's not the standard's fault. All right, now, once again, I'm not saying standards is a silver bullet. It's not something that's going to solve all your development woes, but I think it's the single largest predictor of a maintainable code base, if you're following the standards. So, that begs the question, what kind of standards exist for the Vue community at large? What are those standards out there that we can all share together and all know about, whether we're working on, by ourselves, on a small team, or anywhere across the world? And in my eyes, there are 4 sources of standards across the Vue.js community. The first is the Vue Js Style guide, and probably the most obvious, because its literal purpose is to provide a set of standards for us all. The next is the scaffolding generated by the Vue CLI. Now, I'm not getting into Vue CLI or Vite here, because really I prefer Vite, but I'm really just talking about that file structure that we're all used to seeing. Another source is the official Vue Js Libraries, and those are all the libraries listed on the official Vue documentation website under the official projects piece there. And then lastly, and yes, admittedly maybe a little bit more loosely, we have the most popular component frameworks, things such as Vuetify or Quasar or Bootstrap Vue. Alright, so let's first of all dive a little deeper into those last 2 items. That is, the official and component libraries. Admittedly, their primary purpose is functionality. However, as a side effect of them being so widely used, they also provide shared standards. What do I mean by that? Well, take Vue Router for instance. If you end up using Vue Router as your routing solution for your Vue.js project, you're not just opting in to a package, you're really opting into a community of people who use the exact same package, and therefore you're able to interact with others all across the world who are knowledgeable and familiar with that package. So that's part of what these official libraries and these component libraries provide for us, is this set of standards to follow. Vuex embraces this by saying on its official website that it's a state measurement pattern plus library. It understands the importance of having a pattern, a standard to follow. Now, what is my point in saying this? Some of this may seem a little bit obvious, but my point is, you should really consider using the existing solution before trying to roll your own or go with some other solution. If there's already a solution out there to meet your needs, go and try to use it unless you have a really good reason not to. Because not only does that solution come with built-in tests, not only does it come with great documentation, but it also comes with standards. Standards that people beyond your team are aware of, and that'll make onboarding new people just that much easier. Now, this applies, I think, to all the component libraries as well, just on a little bit looser level, but the same idea. Alright, that next standard is the structure provided by the Vue CLI, and I really don't have a whole lot to say about this other than it's something we're all familiar with, so let's not mess with it unless we have a really good reason to. Alright, if we drill down now into the components directory, and if we look in the Vue Js Style Guide, you'll see that we have some component standards described for us in the Style Guide that will really go a long way to making our code more predictable. So let's take a look at a few of those standards today. The first one mentioned in the Style Guide is that we really should be using dedicated single-file components. There's really no good reason, unless you're not using a build tool, to not just put all your components in a dedicated Vue file. Also, your single-file components should be named in Pascal case. Your base components should be prefixed with either app or base, and this just kind of groups them all together in the file structure and provides that standard where other people can look at the app, look at the component and say, oh, that's kind of an app-wide reusable component. I know exactly when and where I can use that. And I actually prefer to use app all the time because it starts with an A and is typically going to group all of those and put all of those at the very top of my components directory. Alright, another thing in the Vue Js Style Guide is to use multi-worded names for your components. And this is really more than just a stylistic thing. This is in order to prevent clashing with future or existing HTML elements, as they are by definition always a single word. Another standard in the Vue Js Style Guide is to prefix all your single instance components with the word the. That is components that'll only ever be used once per page. Things like the header or the sidebar. Once again, that predictability makes a new developer or someone brand new to the project know instantly what these components are about. It also suggests to prefix tightly coupled child components with the component name that they're tightly coupled to. For instance, you could have a to-do list and then items within that to-do list, and so you would have a to-do list component and a to-do list item component. Likewise, you could have a job form and then a special location map field on that form, and therefore that component would be called job form location map field. Alright, sometimes, yes, this can get a little bit wordy, but it really groups them together and it helps people know that they are coupled and they cannot be used one without the other. And then lastly, begin with the most general term within your component and end with the most specific. This just groups things together once again, and when you're searching for them in your IDE's quick find or whatever, you can kind of see everything grouped together in one fell search. So for instance, you've got the search widget, you've got the search widget input, and lastly, the search widget results list. Alright, the Vue Js Style Guide actually has a whole lot of other really valuable things in it, but I won't regurgitate them all for you here today. But I do really encourage you, go check it out. It was actually quite a long ways into my time developing with Vue before I even realized that the Vue Js Style Guide existed. And if I'd been utilizing it earlier in my career, earlier in my Vue development, then I probably would have saved myself some headache and some troubles when it came to communicating and coding with my teammates about Vue. Now, if you want to actually make the recommendations from the Style Guide a little bit more available to you and a little bit more real time, you can use the official Eslint Plugin, which will, of course, combined with the powers of your editor, mark errors for you right there in line while you're editing your files. And not only will this include JavaScript errors in your single file components, but it will also warn you of some offenses against the Vue Js Style Guide. So I really encourage you, go check that out and use that in your projects so that you can adhere to these standards as best you can that are mentioned in the Style Guide. Alright, so that does it for the community-wide standards that we have available to us, but I think I'd really be remiss if I didn't recommend a few personal or team-wide standards that I've found useful. I think these are just absolutely necessary because the community-wide standards simply aren't comprehensive enough to cover all our needs. Now, I'm not saying that's the community's fault. There are plenty of standards out there. We just have a lot of different applications, a lot of different ways of doing things, and that's just kind of the way the development world goes. But I really think it's essential that for our own personal development or for our teams, that we craft some standards for ourselves. It's really going to make your development process much smoother. Alright, so my first recommendation for your personal or team standard is a flat component directory. Now, I know some of you might look at this and think it might seem a little crazy, but just hear me out and don't tune out just yet. I think there are a number of different benefits that the flat component directory provides. The first one is that you can quickly navigate from the Vue DevTools to the component file. You just look at the component name in the DevTools, and then you can go directly to it in your file structure without having to surf through different directories and browse through different directories and all this. They're just all in that flat components directory, listed alphabetically for you. It really also encourages navigation with your IDE's quick find feature. That is, because navigating through that long list becomes a little bit more difficult, it really makes you and forces you to try and do the search thing. And if you're naming your components correctly, as the style guide suggests, all your grouping that would normally be done with folders anyway will kind of come out of the box for you. And there's a few other benefits to it that I just don't have time to go over today, but I'm going to be sharing these slides on Twitter after the talk, so if you want to look at that more, you can at that point. Now, I actually have a little bit of a confession to make, and that is I've never actually used the flat component structure in my own projects and in the projects that I've done at work. But I wanted to share it with you guys because I've heard it on the basis of some really smart folks that this really can work well, even for apps at a very large size. But since it's not something that I've used personally myself, I can't 100% recommend it and want to show you the alternative that I have used. But it's very close, and I'll call it today an almost flat component structure. And the reason I'll call it an almost flat component structure is because our components directory actually still is flat. My only difference is that for components that are page specific, I like to store those in a partials directory with my page components. So, for example, as you can see in the screenshot, there's the views directory, and I have a number of different pages that have to do with the client's resource of my application, and within that client's folder are my pages and a directory called partials. Now, what lives in partials here are components that go only on those client pages. They're not full pages within and of themselves, but they are just pieces of those client pages. And I find this works out really well as kind of a compromise between the flat component structure and domain-driven design. It's kind of an in-between that works out nicely for me. Alright, the next standard that I want to recommend that you utilize in your personal projects or your team projects is a standardized route naming convention. And in fact, we kind of saw that in action in the screenshot we put up just a minute ago. Here we see clients create, clients edit, clients index, and client show. If you're familiar with Laravel, this probably looks really familiar to you because it's a standard that they adhere to. And it works great for Laravel, so why not adopt it for the Vue community? Most applications, most CRUD applications, have 4 typical needs for a particular resource. For instance, you would have to have a way to list all of them, a way to create one of them, a way to show a single one of them, and a way to edit a single one of them. And of course a way to delete them as well, but that typically doesn't need a whole page. And so you would see what a resource called users would look like with this standardized route naming convention for a CRUD application. And I'm not going to go through them all because we just don't have the time to. But this really works well and makes your routes very predictable. All right, I want to go now a little bit beyond predictability and talk about some other miscellaneous tips for large-scale applications. My first tip here is wrap your third-party libraries in components. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this little example. Let's say you're using Axios as your HTTP client, and what I would recommend you do is actually wrap Axios in a maybe more generically named class, such as HTTP, and then actually just use Axios under the hood to do the actual grunt work. Now, why in the world would I do this, unless I'm being paid by the line, right? It seems like it just creates a little extra friction, a little extra work. But there are a few benefits. The first is that if for some reason you ever have to switch out Axios for some other HTTP solution, you only have to do it in the one place. Like in this example, I've switched out Axios with Fetch. I didn't have to go throughout my entire code base and switch things out, but rather I just had to target that HTTP class, and the rest of the code base continues using the HTTP class as normal. In fact, the people who are using that HTTP class throughout the rest of the code base, they don't even really have to know that the underlying dependency changed. They just keep using the same interface for that class as they've been used to using. Another benefit of it, to me, is that it really exposes ways to kind of expand the functionality of your utility classes. For instance, here I've kind of built in a way to alert a user or perform some kind of action whenever an HTTP request fails from Fetch. Now, alert obviously maybe isn't the best solution, isn't the best user-friendly thing, but you get the idea. Now, of course, with Axios, there are also certain hooks you can hook into to do similar things, but to me, they're just not as obvious, and for some third-party libraries, those hooks simply may not exist. And so if you wrap them, the ability to extend and augment your third-party libraries really becomes a lot more clear and a clean path for how to do that. Alright, and this is just one more example of how you could do the same thing by extending your HTTP class with some caching. Alright, so not only can you do that with libraries though, things that are, more functional in nature, but you can actually even do it with third-party components. So for instance, I could create a wrapper component called AppIcon, and we've called it AppIcon because of standards, right? And so what this AppIcon does is actually provides a singular interface for working with multiple types of third-party icons. In this case, Font Awesome and Material Design icons. My next tip for you guys is to interact with REST APIs with SDKs. Maybe your service already provides an SDK, and if it does, then great, use it. But if all it provides is an API endpoint to hit, I encourage you, wrap that API in a simple SDK of your own, and that could be an SDK you end up using just for that project, or it's something you could even share between multiple projects. But it really helps you eliminate the opportunity for typos and gives you something a little bit smarter to work with, something like a class with a method on it that your IDE can autocomplete for you. Plus, should the REST API change sometime down the road, you only have to update your SDK, and the rest of your codebase can remain untouched. Also, auto-register based components. They need to be available globally anyway, so you might as well go ahead and auto-register them with a simple piece of code such as this, and you don't even have to think about importing and registering them yourself. And then lastly, just do your testing. I know there's a lot of times that we just don't feel like doing it, and it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but for your large-scale applications, I promise you, it's better to do the work up front than to have to deal with the bugs and the regression issues down the road. On a personal level, yes, sometimes testing can be frustrating, but I have never ever regretted doing or creating a test. There have been plenty of times where I have regretted not creating a test. Alright, that wraps up my talk on patterns for large-scale Vue Js applications. But maybe you're in the middle of writing your own Vue Js application and you could use a little help. Well, over at Vue School, we'd be happy to lend a hand. You see, we offer a number of business services, including development, consulting, and team training in the form of educational videos as well as live workshops. So if you're interested in any of these services, reach out to us at team@vueschool.io and we'd be happy to help. Also, if you want to build your very own real-world Vue.js application, you should check out the Vue Js3 Masterclass. In it, Alex and I teach the essentials, things like Vue router and single file components, but also do deeper dives into more complex topics like state management with Vuex, SEO, and more. Plus, if you sign up for our subscription service, you get access to the Vue Js3 Masterclass, plus access to a number of other great courses that will teach you how to be an expert with Vue. Plus, there's a number of these courses that are free, so you really have no excuse to not go and just check them out today. Alright, y'all. I really enjoyed being here with you, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Danielle, for that talk.
Thanks, Mark.
How are you doing, Danielle?
Doing great, man. Awesome to be here.
Cool. So from the audience, if anyone has a question to Danielle about Vue, especially in large applications, just go ahead and ask. So, maybe there will some questions coming in. If not, I have a few questions prepared myself. I would just go ahead and ask you those. What do you think is the most challenging part of keeping your code predictable? Because it's not always easy.
Yeah, especially when you're working on a team of other developers, you can get more things done that way, but predictability, I think as the size of the team goes up, predictability goes down, right? It's kind of a hard balance to achieve. So that causes issues sometimes. I think ways you can kind of help eliminate some of that deterioration is really by communicating with your team members well, especially through documentation and tools like Eslint to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page. That's probably one of my biggest tips there.
All right, thank you. What else? Oh yeah, I saw that you used the almost flat component structure. I used something in a bigger project with folders, and it was as you like the things that you mentioned that would happen happened. It wasn't easily searchable and that kind of stuff. So, but what do you think are advantages of the almost flat to the flat component structure?
Sure. So that's one of those tips that kind of comes from like you said, the bad experience of doing it the wrong way, right? I think we've all done that if we've been in code for a little while. But I think the almost flat component structure kind of gives you a little bit more of that, like, I don't necessarily want to see everything all at once, but I still want to be able to kind of search and look for, what I'm trying to find without nesting in, nesting back out, going, just rambling around through the code. I'm also a Laravel developer, so that kind of structure really kind of came from the way that my team would structure blade templates, right? And it works pretty well.
All right, cool. Yeah, because I was because when you do when you have more components, you're like it's like natural. Oh, I want to do a good job in keeping this neat, so I will make folders. It's the next logical step, right? Because everything else you always put in folders and it's nice and neat and and then you forget about it. But with components, it doesn't work that way. But I really like your way of the almost flat because of the domain. It's more like, how do you say, domain separate of concern, let's call it. So if you have something like with the user, you know where to look, right? And I think that's something that intrigues me, so I might use this. I might steal this for my next project.
Nice. Yeah, and I've found that pages a lot of times just naturally separate domains. And so if you're kind of organizing things by, well, this stuff is used on this page, you're kind of automatically doing domain separated stuff. Relatively. True. Yeah.
By the way, in that structure, what do you do with components that don't have to do anything with this page in particular? Something that pops up in one or two different pages, let's say.
Yep. So for that, if it's a more reusable component that would be used in multiple pages, I would put it in the flat component directory.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right. There are no more questions from the audience. Maybe you have something that's coming up for you, something you want to talk about, something interesting.
Sure. Well, so right now at Vue School, I'm actually working on a TypeScript with Vue course, which is turning out to be pretty exciting.
Cool.
I'm somewhat limited in what I've done with TypeScript before. I've used it on one or two like production level projects, but not near as much as I've used JavaScript. But getting to create the course has really kind of not only been a good refresher for me, but it's really taught me a lot of new things about TypeScript with Vue. So if you haven't started using TypeScript with Vue yet, it's actually kind of cool to work with, like seeing all the autocomplete stuff in your IDE and like how accurate it is. It's really kind of exciting. So that just to say, hey, look out for our course coming soon. And also, if you haven't tried out TypeScript with Vue, check it out. It's kind of mind-blowing, actually.
Cool. Yeah, me as almost not TypeScript user, I'm pretty new to TypeScript. It's something you almost can't say nowadays, but I've been pushing it away for so long that now, it's almost too late to say like, oh, I don't use TypeScript, and people are like, what? Well, yeah, I'm getting into TypeScript, so maybe this is something interesting for me.
Yeah, man. Dude, I felt guilty for a long time. I was like, man, I'm the only one that doesn't know TypeScript. And it turns out probably 90% of us don't.
Yeah, but when you look at Twitter, right, it's like everyone uses TypeScript. And if you don't, It's like, shame.
Yep, absolutely. So, but there is definitely benefit there. So there's some cool stuff.
Yeah, I see the benefits. Definitely. When I started learning TypeScript, it was like very easy, probably an example, and I was like, whoa, so I can just ship this and I will be sure that there are no like type errors and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, it's a different feel, right? You ship it and you're like, you feel calmer inside when you push the publish button, right?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, nothing will go wrong, at least not on that side. So
yes, absolutely.
All right, so our time is up. I want to thank you very much, Danielle, for coming up with a talk on such short notice, and for, of course, giving the talk and the answers to your questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, very much for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Yes, of course. And I suppose I will see you around on Twitter. Maybe I think we are already connected. If not, we will connect.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. You have a good one, and good luck with the rest of the conference.
Okay, yeah. Bye-bye, Danielle. Thank you.
Bye.